Welcome to TEDCO's Entrepreneur Expo in downtown Baltimore, where the region's top business owners, innovators, and investors have gathered to network, grow, and celebrate the vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Maryland. I'm Chris Frew with BioBuzz Networks, and I'm joined today by Dr. Liz Clayborne, CEO and co-founder of NasaClip. Liz, welcome. Could you take a second to introduce yourself and your company?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Chris. So I'm Liz Clayborne. I am an emergency medicine physician by training, faculty member at the University of Maryland. And I came up with a novel nosebleed treatment device called NasaClip. And a lot of people ask me, like, how did I come up with this? But believe it or not, it was because in residency, I learned that we see 500,000 ER visits a year for nosebleeds. And I just could not believe that people would show up to the ER for what I consider to be a pretty simple problem. But I find that a lot of people mismanage their nosebleeds. They almost do the opposite of what they're supposed to do. So they put their head backwards. It's actually supposed to be forwards. They'll pinch their nasal bridge. It needs to be down here. And then most importantly, they don't hold constant pressure. You need about 10 to 20 minutes of uninterrupted pressure to stop a nosebleed, which sounds simple, but it's actually a lot harder to do than you might think. If you combine that with the fact that nosebleeds are more common in kids 2 to 10 and then older adults 55 to 80, it's really the least likely population to manage the problem well. So I think they panic because they can't get their bleeding to stop, and then they show up to the ER and they want to be seen right away. But for me, I'm like, this is not a gunshot wound, it's not a stroke or a heart attack, and so they often have to wait. And my frustration as a doc was that I didn't have a solution for them while they were waiting. They were like bleeding all over the waiting room, panicking everybody. So as a resident, I was trained to like tape together 2 tongue depressors to make a clip, and I'm like, how is there not a device for this? So I came up with one. NasaClip is a medical device for treating nosebleeds. And the way that it works is it combines external compression that is adjustable with intranasal sponges that can be medicated. So sometimes docs will put vasoconstrictive agents on the sponges to help the bleeding, or you can use it without any medication. If you were having a nosebleed, you'd simply clear your nose of clot, insert the sponges in the nostrils, rotate this into place, and pinch shut. And just like that, you have hands-free compression that's comfortable, adjustable. And when you're squeezing, you're putting internal pressure in the correct anatomic location to stop that bleeding fast. You can see my mouth's clear, my eyes are clear. Now I can calm down, I can relax. I leave this in place for about 10 to 20 minutes and then release and check for bleeding. And this is the device that is available on nasaclip.com right now for you to purchase. And one of the exciting things, Chris, that I was going to share with you today is we actually have a new version of our device, which is reusable and launching on Amazon very soon. So it's the same concept with the compression and the sponges, but this one, after you use it, you can actually disassemble, remove the sponges, and then this piece is something that can be reused in cap in case you're like a chronic bleeder or you just want to always have that solution handy, and you'll be able to buy sponge refills. So that is the NasaClip solution, born out of my know-how as a mom and as a physician. And I'm just so excited that it's a Baltimore-born company and someone that was really early on funded and really supported by TEDCO.
That's great. What a great story. I love the founding story for entrepreneurs. And so often it's solving a problem that you experience or you have personally. Again, and 500,000 doctor visits. Imagine all the other patients that can be seen if they're not coming to
Exactly. And then a lot of people have nosebleeds that are maybe not coming to the hospital, but it's still a pain point for them, right? Like maybe you're having to pick your kids up from school, or maybe it's interrupting, something that you're doing, an activity or routine or sports. So we initially designed it for the clinical space in the hospital, but I've really grown in other channels like schools, sports medicine. Disney picked us up on all their cruise ships and parks. So now we're looking at travel and event medicine like airlines, cruises, resorts, and I'm just really excited about the potential for the product and the company.
That's fantastic. Well, anybody that's a parent knows that it's like a professional sport to get your kid to sit down for 10 minutes to stop a nosebleed. So I'm sure they're
and nobody's pinching their nose for 10 minutes.
That's great. Well, Liz, tell us a little bit about. I love the founding story. Tell us a little bit about your experience with TEDCO.
Absolutely. So TEDCO is really near and dear to my heart because they're the very first institution that gave me funding. So back in 2020, when I first started fundraising, I did the TEDCO Builder Fund, which is what it was called at that time. And I was with a really small cohort. This was in the pandemic. is actually an interesting story because I was 6 months pregnant when the pandemic hit and had worked in the hospital. I was still full-time as a clinician at that time and gotten through this very like tumultuous season of, working in PG County in the ER that was like very, very busy with sick COVID patients. And you have to think back to this is when we didn't know what was going on. People were dying left and right. I was intubating people in the parking lot. And so it was all the more scary because I was pregnant. But coming off of that, I delivered my second daughter in May of 2020. And I had in that spring applied for the TEDCO Builder Fund. And so I'm like taking a breath with this baby and then realized, oh, I have an accelerator program to do. And so part of the reason I was so really bonded to the other people in the Builder Fund is because they remember me being this ER doc that, breastfed her newborn infant through the entire curriculum, which was virtual at that time, and just really supported and cheered me along in those very early stages of when I was conceptualizing the device, trying to figure out how it was going to be made, who was going to manufacture it. And they provided that community that is really actually members that are, I consider close friends from the very beginning, in addition to giving me the capital that helped me kind of get towards my first prototype. And then finally, I think the nice thing about that program is that we got executive management support. So I had some advisors, one of which is still with my company to this day. And that was all because I had that early experience with TEDCO as my first accelerator.
That's fantastic. The community for an early startup is something that can't be overstated how important it is. So they were one of your first investors, and you mentioned Amazon, you mentioned Disney, so
Yeah,
you're growing. Is
absolutely.
TEPCO still involved with you? Have they?
Absolutely. TEDCO has been with me every step of the way. They've actually invested in every round I've been in. So I did the Builder Fund where I got $50,000. I then went on to raise 1.1 million in convertible notes. I did 2 different rounds. They participated in that. So I got my first million in founding and funding. And I think those first dollars are the hardest to raise. So having an institutional backer like TEDCO was huge. And they also obviously introduced me to their network, gave me a lot of publicity whenever they had the opportunity to provide those events and PR. And then from there, we are actually in the middle of our seed round, which is a $4 million raise, and they've also invested in that. And so they're like, my triple backers. And I expect to be a star company for them that they can be proud of and taking to the top. And I've said it multiple times because I'm going to manifest this, but I will be a $1 billion company here in Baltimore. And I want to be a rising star within the TEDCO organization, an example of how far companies can make it when they provide early access to funding and the resources that founders like me, especially women and people of color, need in those early days of starting a company.
What I love about that, Liz, is you're already thinking about giving back. And and I also want to say that that's something that I've experienced here in Baltimore is, people, and I have no doubt you'll be a $1 billion company, but a lot of the people that I talk to that are growing here in Baltimore are already thinking about not just growing a business, but how they can, make an impact.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more. What's it been like growing your business here in Baltimore, here in Maryland?
Yeah, so I'm faculty with the University of Maryland, and I kind of founded the company because I was here. And what I didn't realize is this was a perfect place to start a medical device and life science company. Not only do we have an ecosystem where there's really strong academic institutions and a lot of interest in, the med science and tech industry, but there are resources available here when it comes to space where you can build. There are a lot of manufacturing opportunities here, and there's a lot of like talent and employee, pools that you can draw from in order to build your organization. In addition to that, I really feel like the state of Maryland is really vested and interested in making this a med tech hub for the nation. And one of the opportunities that Tammy Thomas actually got me earlier this year was a shout out by Governor Westmore at his State of the State. And I was one of the companies he mentioned that, was something that was going on in the state, built in Baltimore, and was an example of how innovators are giving back to medicine and providing better care to families in need. And I just was obviously glowing during that opportunity, but it just showed me that in addition to the dollars, there's really a vested interest from TEDCO and the state of Maryland in supporting companies like NasaClip.
Well, we're glad you're here. You're doing amazing things. Tell us what we can expect out of NasaClip, in the years to come on your path to $1 billion. Um,
Definitely. Thanks for that, Chris. So right now we're still fundraising. So, most entrepreneurs will tell you we're always looking for that capital. It never, the need for money never really goes away. And so one of the things that I'm working on right now is I've closed 2.5 million of my $4 million seed raise, which means, by the way, Chris, that I've raised a total of 3.5 million. So as a Black female founder, that is something I'm really proud of because statistically that just does not happen very often. And one of the metrics that I use to illustrate how challenging it can be for someone from my demographic to fundraise is to give an example of a white male founder on average may need to speak to about 7 contacts to get a yes or a return on investment, whereas a Black female founder might be speaking to 10 times that amount, 70 people to get 1 yes. So you hear a lot of no's on the way to raising millions of dollars, which is why my seed raise, it's been taking longer than expected, but I have no doubt that we'll get there. And one of the ways that we're trying to help close this round, and we have about 1.5 left that we need to raise, is we just launched a WeFunder campaign. And the WeFunder campaign to me is important, not just because it is allowing me to access more capital from a more varied resource, but I think it also speaks to an equity issue, which is that, typically in fundraising, in order for someone to contribute as an angel or, part of venture capital, all those people are considered accredited investors, meaning that they either make $200,000 a year or 300 as a couple or have a net worth of $1 million. And there are a lot of people in my family, in my community, who don't meet those qualifications. And even though they've been very proud of me and watching this whole journey, they have not been able to participate until now as an investor. And so I don't want to just carry with me a certain demographic as I climb towards, this $1 billion exit that I want to have. I want to be able to carry people from my own community. So I'm really excited that people can now go, no matter what background and kind of, whether they're accredited or not, to wefunder.com/NasaClip, NasaClip, and you can invest as little as $100 to $100,000. So I'm really excited about that. The other reason we're doing the WeFunder campaign is we're about to launch on Amazon, which is really exciting. So, I recognize that if I was a mom and I had a kid with, nosebleeds, I'd probably look on Amazon. So we're excited about that. And then we're also growing in several other kind of new verticals. Sports medicine is something that, a lot of trainers have told me. Wrestling, MMA, boxing, basketball, all these sports where nosebleeds are common. I think you'll see NasaClip as that household name for nosebleed rescue, the Band-Aid of nosebleeds that you're eventually going to see in every home, school, office, or clinic. And I'm really excited that if you're watching this, you're going to be one of the first to know about it.
Well, congratulations, Liz, on all your success so far and on all the impact you're making on patients and also the impact you're making on your community. That you're building a triple bottom line company, and it's really exciting to talk with you today. And I thank you for joining us here at the TEDCO Expo.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
My name is Chris Frew with BioBuzz Networks. We're live today from the TEDCO Expo here in Baltimore. Thank you for joining.